All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am so excited to be talking with Georgi Feidler today from Hire.Train.Inspire. Georgi, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Damon. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. We're going to be talking today about from scale to sale. I got to be able to say it. Escape the friends and family trap to build a deal-ready business. Oh, this is a topic that I've seen before, and I love it that we're talking about today, Georgi.
Same. I think it's really, really, it's really so relevant. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder of Hire.Train.Inspire, and we're like a GPS for small to mid-sized businesses. And we work predominantly with founders and business owners to get them out of the grind, place A players in key seats, and help them scale, sell, or prepare for what's next. So I love talking about this. I could talk about this all day long, but I didn't start out in consulting. I started out inside the chaos, which is a great way to describe it. I started out in healthcare. I was part of a company that grew from 4,800 to 6,800 employees in just 3 years, mainly through acquisition. Learned a lot about that. Typically, healthcare is very red tape and corporate, but apparently when it's going through acquisitions, not so much. So that was a lot of fun to bring that go-to-market strategy and bring competitors together under the same roof. And then a few years later, I moved into SaaS, software as a service, and we went through 2 capital raises, over 105 million with both Bain and Goldman Sachs. And that taught me a lot as well. Sometimes when we get money, we don't necessarily act in the smartest ways with it. But what I learned there is that growth and deals aren't the end of the deal. They're just really the beginning. And the real test is whether the business can thrive without being dependent on one person, which is typically the founder.
So this is great because you've been through the acquisition process. You've seen the integration of companies and also the raising of money. So in the acquisition process, so now I'm going to step back a little bit because I think it's great when you talk about deal ready business and looking at the acquisitions that you were a part of before. How has that really helped you from that buyer's perspective, help your clients today?
Yeah, so all of that is really what led me to launch HTI. Today, we work with 2 main kinds of clients. We work with the baby boomer founders who are planning for succession and want to protect their legacy. And then we work with those founder entrepreneurs that are navigating that friends and family trap that really blocks their ability to scale and step back. So my passion really came through being kind of forged in all of those different fires. And I really want to come alongside the founder and help them preserve what they built. I think entrepreneurs are really the lifeblood of innovation. I used to call myself an accidental entrepreneur, but I've been doing this for a decade on my own, so I can't really call myself accidental anymore. But I think, they have the ability to change families and communities and futures. And so I think, one of the things that's very present for me is with the great boomer exit underway, it feels really critical to make sure that those businesses don't just survive the transition, but they thrive long into the future. And I'm really passionate about being a steward to help them preserve their legacy and leave it to that next generation. So that's a lot of what I've been focused on recently.
Yeah. And it is really too bad just when you see these long-term businesses, some of them small community, real niche, small community businesses that have been there for 50 years or whatever, or even larger businesses that you see that they're there one day and the next day, the 100 employees and everything is gone. And it's just because they were not really thinking about what is the succession plan? How are we going to transition? What is the next phase for our business beyond us?
Absolutely. They were busy working, right? Making things
Yeah.
happen. Yeah. So 50% of U.S. privately held businesses are boomer owned. Most, a lot of people know that.
Yeah.
10,000 of them are retiring every day. And of those 10,000, 60% of them don't have a succession plan at all. And you're absolutely right. By the time they get to the finish line, like they're exhausted. They're just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm ready to be done. But the macro view of that is like, that's $10 trillion in enterprise value that could transfer hands in the next decade. But much of
Hmm.
it is at risk, right? Because we're not being intentional about stewarding that transition.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is cool to see that you're helping people doing this. I've got a passion for it because there are just literally so many of these businesses, on the end of when you look at lower mid market businesses under 5 million or so in revenue. I mean, the chances of selling them are like 20% or something like that without really preparing. So that alone is a huge indicator of how many of these businesses are just there today and gone tomorrow because of that. And that affects the community. It affects those families involved with that business, and it certainly affects the founders.
Yeah, I always say succession isn't a transaction, it's a transformation, and it's the founder's last act of leadership.
Founder's last act of leadership. That's awesome.
Yep, so they should do it well.
Yes, yes. So, Georgie, as you got into your career, what really drew you into this part of helping founders or early stage founders or these later stage founders? What really drew you into wanting to choose that as a path for your company?
Yeah, so I think when you get beyond probably the 75 million to 100 million in revenue mark, things at least should be pretty developed, right? You should have everything rolling, right? And yes, you're still pulling growth levers, and yes, you're still doing strategy and all of that, but it should be much more defined, right? You've kind of figured out, if you've gotten to that
Yeah.
size and that scale, you figured out the formula for success. I think when you are smaller than that, typically right around the 4 or 5 million mark all the way up to 30, 40 million, a lot of at least the founders that I work with, they're faced with what I call the friends and family conundrum, or the friends and family trap. The problem is that they built loyalty based early teams, and that's what we all do. Like we all
Hmm.
just, when you're growing, you're like, hey Bob, come on over and help me out with sales. Hey Sue, do you want to do some accounting for me? Right? You go to who you
Yeah.
know. And that actually works great at the early stage because it's built on loyalty and trust, which is really two great things for survival, right?
Yes. Yes.
The problem is that at scale, they become bottlenecks. The same loyalty becomes the blocker, right? So it works at first because instead of titles, you have trust. Instead of systems, you have hustle. And everyone's a hero. And that works awesome. Spouses, siblings, best friends, right? Everybody can step in, and loyalty is the currency. That's the most important thing. But why it breaks later is as you scale, right? And your circle of influence is not 1 to 5, it becomes like 1 to 10 and 1 to 15 and one
Yeah.
to 25. Um, all of that creates this net of confusion, and roles being unclear is now a problem. No SOPs is now a problem. Emotions instead of accountability is now a problem. And because they're so used to being the hero, there is just this natural built-in resistance to outside hires, structure, accountability, all of the things that we know are kind of the DNA for scale. And what happens is founders get trapped in the middle, right? They're the CEO, chief everything officer.
Hmm. Yeah. And it is interesting how you find that because a lot of it really causes businesses to plateau if they don't break through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 72% of SMBs operate without documented SOPs, and founder led businesses are 2 times more likely to fail the sales process due to tribal knowledge dependence.
Love that. I love that. So as you're talking to people, they're going, "Hey, how really would you help me? What are some of the common things that they're saying, some common phrases that you hear?"
Yeah. So 60% of small business owners will say things like delegation is their number one growth obstacle, or they can't even oftentimes put any words to it other than, oh, things are slowing down, or things feel difficult. I'm struggling. It feels like I'm walking through sludge, right? It's things like that. Because the people who helped you build it, right? They're not the ones who you want to look to as the problem, right? And the reality of it is, even though they helped you build it, they're not always the ones who can help you scale it. And
Yes.
so there's such an emotional piece there, right? There's the business piece, there's the growth piece, but there's an emotional piece there too. It can feel like betrayal. And so much of what we do at HTI in our role is help the founder kind of walk that journey and understand that's not betrayal, right? That's growth, that's clarity. And we can reposition people with honor and clarity, and
Hmm.
not betrayal. So we
Yeah.
really look at like 4 different pillars when we're looking at a business, and it's the financials, process independence, identifiable upside, which is kind of the growth lever, is it clear, and then leadership continuity. And so typically there are multitude of problems across those 4 pillars that we start to point out, all right, and that gives them some words and language to
Yeah.
explain more of what they're feeling and what's actually happening, rather than, oh, it's so hard, it's just gotten hard, so hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that hard is often, like you said, it's when I hired this person, could be sometimes a decade ago.
Mhm.
Um, they were doing really good at the beginning because they just took care of it and fixed
Yeah.
things when we didn't needed it. And now that they've got 6 people in that area now, and we're trying to do things, there aren't processes and procedures. They're tribal knowledge training everyone, and they may have 1 or 2 of those people that are doing really good, but there's a lot of them that don't, because they don't have that structure in that system. And it
Right.
really begins to hurt you, because the person that you hired at that time, great person, really helped you do that a long time, and you have that emotional connection, but they may be the person too that will never be able to lead those people and help you develop those systems, and will fight against it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because it's just not native to them, right? They have everything in their head, and to them, because they have been there since the beginning, they know, just like the founder, where all the bodies are buried and how everything works. It's just, well, it's easy, right? It's easy, and they're not thinking in a systems or process mindset. So it makes it really hard when you're trying to grow, and it becomes something that you end up fighting against.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you break out of that?
Yeah, great question. So I posted something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, okay, so what do you do with these people? And you kind of have three choices, right? You have this is the exception to the rule and not the rule. The people who they can grow with you, right? They
Yes.
they they just needed some clarity, and they
Yep.
needed you to define their role and what they're accountable for, and they're good to go. Now, I say that again, that's an exception to the
I agree.
rule, not the rule. It's really important to understand. And we all want our people to be the exception, but it's not.
Yeah.
Um, you can reposition them, right? You can say,
Yep.
okay, you know, um, maybe you're not the CMO, right? But you're a strong marketer and you have all of this tribal knowledge, and that will really help us here in our
Hmm.
copy or whatever, right? You can reposition them, or you can release them. And as hard as that is, right, there is a loving way to do that. And it's actually, I always say, clear is kind, right? It's not clear, or it's not kind not to be clear about what
Yes.
your goals are. And make sure that they have those same goals. So much of the work that we've done with a lot of our companies is just helping them articulate what their vision is, right? Because it comes as news to a lot of their people that are there. Oh, they want to scale this. They want to scale this to 100 million. They want to scale this to 50 million or 60 million, right?
Yeah.
And once you make it really clear, like, hey, this is the vision of the company, this is the mission, these are our values, this is what we're going after, right? A lot of them will self-select out. They're like, oh, that doesn't sound fun. I don't want that.
Hmm.
Right. So that's a lot of what it is that we're doing is just walking through that. And it requires, it requires a combination of both like the honoring of the relationship and the person, and then walking through that with people so they can come to those same conclusions, right? Because you don't want to burn bridges. Like,
Yeah.
you should be eternally grateful as the founder that they were here, and you couldn't have gotten where you're at without them.
Yeah.
um, so saying goodbye is often really, really difficult to do. But yeah, there's the personal part of it, and then, like I said, there's our framework around those 4 pillars, and we really can identify and give language to those gaps through those 4 pillars, right?
Yeah.
And every problem is either a people, process, or systems problem, and because process and systems are created, instituted, led by people, it ultimately is a people problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you said one thing a moment ago, which I think a lot of founders just assume people understand, is that's vision, the vision for where they want to go. And it is so important to articulate that vision to your entire organization.
Yeah.
But I think you said something that was really important there to those long-term people that were there when in the beginning, taking the time to sit down and articulating that vision and how it affects them,
Mhm.
and early in the process, right? Because I've seen it where you may do it, you may not do it completely, but if you do it completely, like you said, and someone goes, "Yeah, I'm not someone that wants to be supervising a lot of people or doing this kind
Right.
of work that we're moving into or whatever it is," they can self-select on their own terms. And
Yes.
that's a great thing because, like you said, I think if that is the way you can do it, or to the reposition, I really think that that's
Mhm.
awesome too. When you see that and you go, Damon, you're really technical and you know all this stuff. Why don't you do this? This is really good. You don't have to be the person that leads everyone, because I know that's what you don't really enjoy. Get them back into what they enjoy and allow them to continue on there. I think those two
Yeah.
they're awesome. And then,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The I would also add, that is the ideal. The only way that that works and works really well is if there is a willingness to have trust and really, really honest conversations,
Yes.
right? And there can't be an attachment of like I should, right? We can't, there can't be an attachment because a lot of times, even if reposition somebody, it
Yes.
typically means, okay, we're demoting you, and I used to be this and I used to be that, right? And so there's just a lot of head trash that comes along with it on all the
Yep.
sides, like from the teammate as well as the founder. And so I'm one for just really calling that out and getting that on the table, because pretending like it's not there is just going to muck things up later, right? So we just need to say, hey, no, we get it. Like, this is going to be hard. There's pride here. Like,
Yep.
it's a lot to swallow. But you always have a choice, and the goal is for you to know where everything is, for you to know the same information that I know, so that you can make the best decision for you, and we can make sure that it's aligned with the company.
I love that. I love that, because there is that head trash that you're going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to deal with. And even if they do decide that, I think if you're open and honest about it, and what you just said, that encourage them to make the decision that's best for them in the long term, they might love it and continue on. They might self-select out and decide to do something different. So that's a
Yeah.
great way.
Or
And
more often than not, they might also temporarily say yes. And then once they're actually in it and being held accountable to it, then they realize, oh, no, it's a no.
yeah.
So sometimes that happens as well.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah, that's a great point. And I think the most common is, and I believe, and I don't know, I want you to weigh in this, obviously, is you do end up releasing a lot of those people that you started out with.
You do. Yeah. I would also say, um, sometimes there is this once, at least in my experience in working with the founders, once they have this epiphany, right, there is this desire to like want to rush through it and just rip off the band-aid, which creates chaos in the
Yeah,
organization.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I also don't recommend that, right?
yeah,
Change needs to be intentional. We need to allow for change management. We need to allow for people to kind of steady. And so, I don't recommend once you have that epiphany, like getting rid of your entire, you know, leadership team, everybody reports to you in just one fell swoop, right? That wouldn't be a really good, a
yes.
good response to that. And I know that that seems like, oh no, duh, obvious, but seriously,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
it's
only say that because I've had people like they want to do that. It's like because it's painful for them and it's uncomfortable for them, so it's like let's just get it over with. But that's just also can put your
yes,
organization in chaos. So don't
yeah.
do that.
And from the compassionate side of helping someone decide that they need to do something else or letting them go, it's like you don't want to put somebody in that position that they're hating every single day,
Yep.
because you ultimately, the goal is we have to do this. It's not kind of want to do it. It's we have to do this if you're going to go down a certain path. And if
Mhm.
they're in that and doing that every day is driving them crazy, they're not performing well, and you continue to have those conversations, it's not a good situation for anyone.
Right. Right.
And
And what I've also found a lot is, when founders are walking the path of scale, um, unless they're a second, third, fourth time founder, it's usually their first time, right? Like the size that they are is the biggest they've ever been, right?
yes,
With 5 million is the biggest I've ever been, 10 million is the biggest I've ever been. And so because you don't have that prior knowledge and you've not walked the path before, you don't automatically know where all of those potholes are. And so walking that path with a team who also hasn't walked it before can be really, really painful
yep,
because no one is there pointing out the hole in the road or that big huge landmine, right? And so I always say, like, in a leadership team especially, right, we can if the founder is a first time founder walking the path, we can afford to maybe have like one other person, but there need to be people around that founder that are pointing out those landmines. Otherwise it's
yeah,
going to be a very, very, like, it's growing pains anyways, right? They call them growing pains because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, it's growth, but it will be really miserable if there's not a group of people who have been there before that can point out some things.
yes. And it's funny because I was just talking with a founder last weekend about this very thing, and they were saying how they've gotten to, and it's tens of millions they've gotten to in their business. And they said, I didn't realize this, but we need a whole different level of person with experience to go to double that again and where they want to go. And
Yep.
we had a long conversation about it because it's the difference between, in a smaller business, you might be able to have a really good accountant slash bookkeeper that does everything. But when you're talking about our business is making tens of millions of dollars every year, you have to have somebody that understands what are we doing with our money, how are we managing our not to pay as much in taxes and
Yep.
investing in different things and all this other kind of stuff, that person is just overwhelmed because
Right.
they were good at doing the books really well, making sure the
Mhm.
bank statements are done, and then we have great financial reports or financial reporting. It's a whole nother level of experience that they need on top of where they're at to do that scale. And as you said, that founder has never been there, which is
Exactly.
such a big deal.
Yeah. That's why clean financials are one of our pillars, because investors and buyers don't trust what you can't prove, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
You can have all the words in the world, but they don't trust what you can't prove. And so I think, the way that looks, you're right. In the early days, like we just need accountants. We need you to accounting people, right? Bookkeeping, looking back in the past at what
hmm,
happened. And then you reach a certain threshold where you need FP&A looking forward, right? Like you need that strategic finance. One example, so we brought in, we work with different fractionals as well. So
hmm,
we had a client who brought in a fractional CFO, moved them out of messy QuickBooks and things like that. Got actual strategic finance dashboards that the CFO built, an actual model,
hmm.
and we uncovered a 500K margin upside. Right, that if that wasn't done, would have have never been discovered. So I think you're absolutely spot on there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of thing too, as you move from that into, as you go, there's different levels, because sometimes that first person can help you a bit more, but there's just that point to where when you're financial people and you look at the financials at the end of the month, or hopefully you're measuring a lot more than that. But when you get there and you go, okay, this is what it's really telling us, and these are the opportunities we have within the numbers from my point of view, and then working with the overall organization, that's where, as you said, you're going to find those opportunities to go, okay, here's a lot of money we're leaving on the table because of
Yep.
this or
Yep.
that. And it really, that's what you miss when you, and it's great that if you're getting good financials, you're well ahead of a lot of people, because a lot of
Yeah.
people run the checkbook. And
Exactly.
yes, I could go over a
Yeah.
couple of stories about that, but the real thing is cool is when you get that financials to actually help you run the business better. And and
Yes.
and then it's investing your money and making more money as you get to the next sides above that. But it's so
Yeah.
cool. It's so
And
cool.
a lot of people get nervous too. Oh, I can't afford a full-time CFO. You may not need one. Like you may not need a full-time
Yeah,
CFO, right? Like we outlined a specific project. Like
yeah,
we knew what we needed,
yeah,
and they came and delivered, right? And so it's not like you have
yeah,
them on your payroll forever. So I'm a big fan of that too. Is understanding. Okay, here's what we need to get. Let's match somebody. Let's put them on a project. Let's get that right.
yeah.
And then oftentimes like your bookkeeper or your a controller or something like that, they can maintain it once it's built.
Yes, yes. Or we've even used, like you said, with the fractional people, and that's something that's really cool over the last 5 to 7 years. The fractional resources that we have available now, we
Yeah.
even have them that will come in and go, okay, they're helping us to analyze the end of month and really talk through the management review of the financials on a monthly or quarterly basis, because it can help so much just doing that piece of it. Like you said, certain project pieces of it, and then as we find projects outside that, it's so nice to be able to have that resource when you need it.
100%.
Good stuff. So as you're moving along, helping these people really understand and get their businesses, breaking out of this friends and family trap, getting the right A team in place. What are some of the things that they're talking about and you're hearing coming out of those founders' mouths at that point?
Yeah, I think when we put an A player in a key seat, there's I call it like push versus pull. A lot of times with a founder, when you have somebody who isn't keeping up with the velocity of their seat, that's how I describe it, right? When you're trying to scale or grow, there's this idea that you're going like this, right? Well, whoever's in that seat also has to go like that too, unless they've already been here, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes they might be going like this, right? They might be going like this, and it's like this, right? So the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It feels to them that they're constantly having to push, right? Push to get this done, push to get that done.
Oh,
When
that's right.
you place an A player in a key seat, it starts to be pull. They're pulling you along. They're saying, "Hey, come on, what about that?" Like they're pulling you with them, right? All the boats start to rise. So I think that that's one of the key things. We talked about clean financials. I want to go to process independence
Yeah.
briefly as well. This is something most founders will say that they want, but in practice, they actually don't like it at all, because they're visionaries, and this is not sexy at all, right? Like pro- doing processes and SOPs, that's just that's just not attractive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
However, at scale, we know that businesses have to run on systems and processes, and not the
Yeah.
founder's head, or not whatever's in the legacy team's head,
Hmm.
right? And so we had a distribution company, and as we were working on the succession plan, right, one of the things we realized is that the founder was very much a key component of the sales process with the accounts and with the customers, and that became like a really mission critical piece to get covered, right? Like we had to put somebody in there as good or better, and we had to take the time to document those relationships and document the SOPs
Yes.
and the approach, right? And making sure that was unified. Otherwise, we would have had a loss, right? We would have had a gap. So again, while it's not sexy or fun or exciting, it is necessary because you can't scale what's in your head. It
Yes.
doesn't. It has to get out of there some way, right? Whether that's through your voice or through your fingertips or turning on a video and just recording yourself and putting it in AI, right? We have that now too. And we do that.
Mhm.
It still has to get out of your head so that it can get into other people's.
Yes. Yes. And you make some great points because the tools we have available to us now are so much better than they were a few years ago. Not
Yep.
just AI, but I mean, even to the point, I am amazed at how much I get videos. I use video anymore to explain a process to somebody so they
Yep.
can do it. It's really crazy. So, um, you're getting these A players in the key seats. You're helping them get going. What are the next roles? And we're talking about people and process and getting that so you can get those people in the seats and get them going.
Yeah. So I would say the next side is for them to understand the growth levers. Oftentimes, the growth strategy also lives in the founder's head, right? It was their idea. They baked this thing up, but it hasn't been, codified. The
Yep.
rest of the team may not understand what's the true growth levers here. What do we pull to make more happen, right? Hope's not a strategy. If your
Yeah.
if your if your sales, strategy or your growth strategy is we're just going to keep doing more, that's no bueno, right? So I think that's an important part as well, especially in the readiness, in deal readiness, because your buyers are paying for tomorrow, not yesterday. So even though you might have the clean financials and you might have the process, they want to see the future. And it's up to you, right? Even though you're not a part of the future because you're selling it, but it's up to you to create that for them, to
Yeah.
share that, right? So we had a SaaS client and they were stuck in very reactive pivots. They were very focused on like the product and engineering. That's who they were in the seat that they sat in. And this this concept of like a roadmap, saying what you're going to do, not just for the next quarter, but for the next year,
Mm-hmm.
and actually tying that to revenue levers. Like what does that what's the point in us doing this, right? Or building this if we haven't identified that it's, positioned for 4-time ARR growth, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that. Right? What is it tied to? And so starting to help, people think that way, founder first, and then, whoever your growth or sales leader is. But you can't be the only one in your business that knows what the growth levers are. Other people have to know them too.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to know them first,
Yeah.
but then your other people have to know them as well.
And that's a great point because, as you said a few times now, when that lives in the founder's head and you bring A players on, they really need to be part of that because they can do some of the pulling where you were pushing before. And that's a big transition to go through, because if I'm sitting here as a founder today and I've always, I'm stuck in that friends and family mode, and I've always got to be, hey, I need to go talk to Steven because I know he's have it, we got, or Dave or Steve or Susan or whoever it is we're talking with. I have to
Yeah.
do that. Whereas when you get those A players, it's more as I'm sharing the vision of where we want to go, and I want to empower you to help us get there. Do your
Hmm.
part and get there. Because as you said a while ago, it's like they're getting, on the other hand, with the friends and family, the friends and family could be getting farther and farther from where you want to go, but those A players are really leading and pulling you there.
Yes, yes. And I think one important caveat to that, I see a lot of founders who live way up in the clouds and then way down into the dirt, and they forget that in between. And
Great.
that's super, super critical. So if you're going to mobilize and delegate and empower other people, right, to go and do whatever, right? We're talking about growth here in this situation, but whatever, it could be whatever. You have to give them that in between. And that, for whatever reason, it can be really challenging. And I think it's because it's their baby and they've created it and they're visionaries. And so they have the pie in the sky, big, up in the clouds dream, but they know all the little pieces of everything. And so it's really, they tend to go between way up here and way down in the weeds. And what most, especially A players need, is they need that concept. They need that thread from the very, very big to the very, very detailed, in order for them to act in a more powerful way. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's really hard for a founder to like articulate and like verbalize in words, right? Because it's all in their head, and it just ends up oftentimes coming out as this like very detailed, and it's hard for people to follow, and they're like, are you speaking another language? I'm not sure, like, what are you trying to say? And so that's a real struggle. Like, and I think
Yes.
anybody who's ever had their own business and tried to scale it, like they can relate to that. Like if you step outside yourself and you really think about that, you should be able to relate to that. And it's way easier said than done. Like that's
Oh,
really
yes.
challenging to do.
Yes. Yes. And I think it is a process like any other. As there's little steps that you can take along there, and there's going to be steps backwards without even realizing it, and going through. So what is the thing that you really enjoy about what you do the most?
Mm, I think it's probably like the founder journey can be a really lonely one, and you can kind of feel like everyone is looking to you for answers. And the truth of the matter is sometimes you have no freaking clue. Like you
Yeah.
just don't know. But then you can't say that, right? Like you can't say that to the people who are looking to you for answers.
Yes.
And so I love coming alongside founders and like, you can say that to me. Like I'm not going to judge you. Like you can say
Yeah.
that to me. And then I love when there's that aha moment, right? There's like this progress. There's this thing that was realized or that happened, from all of this. And so I think that's really what I like the most about it. One of my so I had two clients. They were actually siblings, and they were in the manufacturing distribution kind of industry. They were second gen business owners. So their dad started the business, and then he retired and split the two. Sister got one, brother got another. So they were separated for 30 plus years, right?
Wow.
Both of them are boomers coming to retirement, and they both built their parts of their businesses very differently. One of them through kind of acquisition and a strong structure. The other one, it was just like, crazy heroics, and we're, in it every single day,
Yeah.
with just huge profitability, right? Because it was a small but mighty team. And both founders wanted to step back, but classic conundrum, right? Like the tribal knowledge rested with them. So what we were able to do was get a successor in place. So I think that's really, really important, is leadership continuity. That's the fourth pillar.
Hmm.
However that plays across, right? Whether that is, for scaling, or whether that's for stepping back, or whether that's, as a baby boomer, succession, leadership continuity is critical, right? You can't be the only one at the table. You have to have a leadership team. So we got a successor in place, and started working on that. The sister saw what was going on. She starts to see that her brother is going on vacations, and he is, not in, work, not in the office a couple of days a week. He's starting to do these
Yeah.
things, right? That are part of stepping back. She's like, oh man, I want a piece of that. So we actually put a shared services model in place for them, because she didn't have the structure, he did. And so put a shared services model in place, which allowed her to start stepping back much sooner. We didn't
Hmm.
have to hire a whole team and
Yeah.
train everybody, right? We identified somebody internal, to be her successor, and we started working on that. And it's just extremely rewarding. Like now that we're on the other side of it, right? Like we're post system integration, we're post, like they're not in the business anymore. We created a governance board and a unified executive leadership structure.
Hmm.
So now, what we do is just monthly sessions with the successor and the founder. I think that's also really critical. I think it's really impossible to give 30, 40 years of knowledge in a couple of weeks or even a couple
Yeah.
of months,
Yeah.
right? And so we do monthly meetings for, the next 18 months where we're really focused on that. But I love like kind of asking the question like, okay, how many emails are you getting now per month? Like we track it every single month, right? And
Hmm.
seeing it go down. How many meetings are you in per week now? And we see it going down. To see him at his beach house and like living his best life. And,
Hmm.
where 3 years ago he was like, he couldn't even commit. He's like, maybe in the next 5 years, I might start to step back. Like that
Yeah.
was his hope, and now he's
Yeah.
in this situation. So that's just so rewarding to see. And then we ended up doing with them a Popeye plan, which is similar to an employee stock ownership program, a
Yeah.
little bit different. And just to see that, the very people who helped build those businesses over the last 20 years are now owners in that. Right.
Yes.
Like that's just
Yes.
that's so rewarding. And that's what I mean by the like stewarding that next generation, right?
Yeah.
Their families are now changed because of that. Their future is now changed because of that. So I love that.
Yeah. I agree. That's such a great thing, and it's awesome what you're doing to help people. So, Georgie, if someone wants to get a hold of you and talk about, hire, train, inspire, what you do, or just chat with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So if you're wondering whether your business could scale, sail, or run without you, we've built a free HTI readiness assessment. So it benchmarks those
Nice.
4 pillars that I was talking about, and it benchmarks your company against those. So you can go to either our website, Hire.Train.Inspire.com, the contact us, and type in HTI readiness assessment to request that, or you can find us on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here today. And again, we had Georgi Feidler with Hire, Train, Inspire talking about from scale to sale, escaping the friends and family trap to build a deal ready business. Thank you so much for being here today.
It was my pleasure. So enjoyed it, Damon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I wanted to say thank you first once and before we get off. Ronald, thanks for dropping the comment in today. Love to have you in here. He said they need to be so talented and skilled. He dropped that. We were talking about the A players, and I agree. All right, everyone. If you got into this late, you need to go back to the beginning and listen to Georgie from there on out, because if you are a founder that is sitting there wondering, how the heck do I get to the next level? You may want to be talking with her. Thanks, everyone. And we'll be back again next week. Georgie, hang out and we will finish offline.